latest and greatest Metaphysical Corner. We need something back here. It says Metaphysical Corner. Maybe we'll work on something. You know, I'm going to be honest. As I've been doing these, I'm not standing still. I constantly read and study and trying to learn. Because, well, that's life in general. You are if you don't want to stagnate. I thought about, we're going to switch gears just a little bit in that all this talk about consciousness, soul, the whole shebang that we've been talking about, what good is it? I mean, outside of the understanding of what is, what we are, and how the universe impacts us and us, them, and the universe, how we interact with the universe, but rather, what good is it to know this, to understand this? And I could think of no greater impact than our health. Our health it's like the old saying goes, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Even at my age, I'm 64, there's times I think to myself, geez, like the old saying goes, if I'd known I'd live this long, I would have took better care of myself. I'm sorry, well, I haven't lived this long, but I'm taking care of myself. And I plan on being around for a while longer yet. I hope I got another 20, 30 years. But all this comes with it. Now we're talking about with all this stuff with metaphysics and the chemistry and the physics we have discussed, or I have, and once again, what does it come down to? Well, that's what the universe is. So, and what's that got to do with health? Everything is the answer is everything. It's got to do with it, with health. One of the things we've been, I have been in the medical field since 1981, June of 1981, and so that's pushing 40 years in the field. I have seen a great deal. Yes, I fix right now lasers, medical lasers, skin lasers, primarily. Though I worked on much more exotic equipment in the past. Well, not that lasers are pretty damn exotic, I must say. But in the past, when I was, especially my years with General Electric, I worked on some of the neatest equipment ever around. Especially, I think I mentioned I used to work on CAT scanners, CT, X-ray, and for a long time I was an MRI specialist. So I got to work. I have had the privilege in my life of working on some of the most advanced equipment in the world. Couldn't work on an MRI today. That's been 20 years since I did that. And I can't even begin to imagine what it's doing, what they do with MRI now, as compared to when I worked on it. But I've been watching. What I've seen. Americans especially. Though a lot of people, I had this tunnel vision of doctors are gods. You don't question your doctor, which is the last thing you shouldn't do, or the first thing you shouldn't do. It's been my experience in my almost 40 years of dealing with doctors. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some good ones. But it's just like any other profession, there's some really good ones, and boy, there's the ones that bring up the rear, if you catch my drift. Some that aren't so good. No one has more respect for nurses than I do. I've seen how nurses are truly the workforce of the medical field. But there's so much the medical field doesn't understand. The medical field looks at everything from a scientific viewpoint, and we will get into this in just a little bit. I talked about it in the past, briefly at least, about Newtonian physics versus quantum physics. Newtonian physics is the just as a reminder, is the large scale physics. Things on like in our existence, and also up to and including planetary scales. It's when you get down to the microscopic and the atomic levels that Newtonian physics no longer applies. It becomes quantum physics. But doctors are used to the Newtonian physics of it, and they try to cure what should be quantum physics problems with Newtonian physics applications. It doesn't work. They don't understand. It's not that they do. I don't know if they're ignorant. I think it's how they're trained. In that, doctors are like any other profession. They go through their medical school, and I admire them for doing it. It's a lot of training. I know this. I realize this. I understand that. But it's only as good as the training they get. Where they get trained in medical schools totally ignore currently they totally ignore the quantum side of it, even though it's been around for a little while. There is a book called Vibrational Healing that I am reading that it talks about using energy for healing. Before you sit there and say, "Oh, that sounds like New Age." Well, I got news for you. This book was written by a doctor. His name is Dr. Gerber, who's at the time he wrote the book had been a neurologist for 11 years, and he was wise enough and smart enough to realize there's much more to what he is dealing with than he's being taught. And he's done a lot of investigation, and he's come up with some really eye-opening observations, especially since he is trained in this. He reminds me of me in that, I am scientifically based. I was brought up with science and mathematics, but I realize there's a more esoteric side. This doctor does too. He realizes there's more than meets the eye. And what I'd like to do, I got the pages here of the preface of the book, and we're going to go through some of what he says. But I want to read this preface to you, and then in future shows we're going to go through what he says, and from his observations as a doctor about the quote unquote more esoteric side of it all. He says, this book is an exploration into various mechanisms of healing. This is an introduction to a new system of thinking about health and illness in general. This system of thought examines human functioning from the perspective of multiple interactive energy systems. It is an attempt to go beyond the current medical paradigm of illness in order to understand at a deeper level why our thoughts and emotions affect our physiology, and also able to comprehend how therapies such as simple as herbs, flowers, and water can be such powerful healers. My approach is to understand this growing field known as vibrational medicine, as I said, that's the name of the book, stems from 11 years of personal research and alternative methods of healing during my years of medical training and practice as an internist. So here's a guy, once again, he's very much an allotropic doctor. He's got the traditional training, but he realizes there's more. I have attempted to build upon the foundations of accepted medical knowledge in order to bridge the gap between science and metaphysics. From my earliest years in medical schools, I sensed there were simpler, less invasive methods of healing illness than the potent drugs with toxic side effects and performing surgery with its accompanying risks. Admittedly, drugs and surgery have brought help and healing to many thousands, and have succeeded in wiping out numerous epidemic diseases. Unfortunately, there are still many chronic illnesses for which current medical therapy offers very little treatment. My own practice in internal medicine is still dependent upon these therapeutic modalities. I would very much like to be able to do without surgical and medical tools, but this time they are still necessary. For many years, I have sought to discover diagnostic methods and therapeutic tools that would be less invasive, less costly, less toxic, and of greater healing benefit to patients. That was one of the underlying reasons behind my search to understand the true nature of healing. It is my conclusion that vibrational healing systems hold the key to extending our current medical knowledge towards an improved understanding, diagnosis, and treatment of human ailments. Medical science has done much to investigate the mechanisms behind disease, but only recently has it begun to study the reasons that people stay healthy. I'm going to stop again for a second. Let me tell you, one of the most interesting classes I ever took at the college level was a class, and I didn't have to take it. It was just, there were many I took just because I wanted to take it. Well, it was called pathological microbiology. And of course, that was the study of all the little critters, bacteria, fungi, viruses that want to make you sick. And I could not believe, I had no idea. I was stunned by the range and array of them. And I came to realize it was a difficult course too. It was a lot of information. But what I got out of it was I realized, wow, it's amazing. We're healthy 99% of the time. I mean, we feel good, we're not sick. Yes, we do get that occasional flu, cold, or other disease. But when you consider all that's out there, we're lucky. We're incredibly fortunate that we're healthy as much as we are. Scientists have tended to focus upon the microscopic molecular mechanisms behind disease causation and have lost sight of the bigger picture. Also, mainstream medicine suffers from an extreme narrow-mindedness in thinking because of its focus upon the Newtonian worldview of people as sophisticated biological machines. Vibrational healing philosophies have the unique perspective that beings are more than flesh and blood, which we certainly are, proteins, fats, and nucleic acids. The body would be but a pile of disorganized chemicals were it not for the animating life force that maintains and organizes our molecular components into living, breathing, thinking individuals. This life force is part of the spirit that animates all living creatures. It is a so-called ghost in the machine. It is a unique form of subtle energy that has fully to be grasped by scientists of the late 20th and early 21st century. This spiritual dimension is an aspect of human nature that is not taught in medical schools. I'll wait till the dogs start barking. It's Sunday evening. I gotta quit doing this on Sunday evening because everyone walks their dogs and my dogs go crazy. Sorry. But I want to re-emphasize this point. This spiritual dimension is aspect of human nature is not taught in medical schools. Therein lies the problem. Nor is well understood by most physicians. But the spiritual element is a part of the human experience that must be taken into account if we are to understand the basic nature of health, illness, and growth. One of the primary reasons that physicians have a hard time accepting the validity of alternative healing methods is that they see the physical body as the only dimension of human existence. Given that one must include physical or cellular systems with gross molecular methods such as drugs or surgery, it's little wonder that the therapeutic effects of weak dilutions of substances, like those used in homeopathy, have been misunderstood and discredited by the orthodox medical system. Homeopathic works at an energetic level which is not yet understood by most medical thinkers. Period, in a sentence. It is only recently that scientists have acknowledged that the mind can influence the biomolecular mechanisms that regulate the body. For many years, doctors thought that consciousness was something that the brain produced, similar to gallbladder producing bile. Consciousness was considered merely a byproduct of the central nervous system's machinations. Neurophysiologists long sought the area of the brain that is the center of free will and decision making. Although they identify areas of the gray matter that participate in this, researchers will look long and hard before they ever discover the real seat of consciousness in the brain. The brain, even though it is a complex biocomputer, still needs a programmer to instruct the nervous system how to perform and what acts to accomplish. That conscious entity, which uses this biomechanism of the body and brain, is the human spirit or soul. Let me repeat that. The consciousness entity that uses this biomechanism of the brain and body is the human spirit or soul. That which we refer to as the spiritual domain is a part of a higher dimensional energy system which feeds directly into the computer hardware we call the body and the brain. It is these higher dimensional elements and systems are so-called subtle energy anatomy that science has yet to recognize. Alternative systems of healing are often effective because they can correct abnormal patterns of function in the higher dimensional systems which control cell physiology and behavioral patterns of expression. The acupuncture meridians, the chakras and the nadis, the etheric body, and other higher systems are part of the human multidimensional anatomy that have been described by ancient schools of healing throughout the world. Western science has long ignored descriptions of ethereal components of physiology because their existence cannot be documented, at least by anatomical dissection. After all, who's ever seen a meridian under the microscope or an aura? And only now has Western technology evolved to a point where we're beginning to get the earliest of confirmations that subtle energy systems do exist, that they influence the behavior of cellular systems. Through my years of research, I have tried to piece together scientific evidence to substantiate the existence of an extended subtle energy human anatomy. It is only through the acceptance of this multidimensional framework of functioning that scientists can begin to understand the true nature of human physiology and the reasons for illness and wellness. So basically what he's saying here is, I got a couple of books and I've read them, and I continue to read on human physiology, how the body works. And it says nothing of this. There's no mention of anything like this. And yet I believe it's as big a part of physiology as anything that's in that book or those books. The evidence I have assembled comes from a variety of disciplines and researchers. Many of the studies I have put together are known to those within the parapsychological and the holistic medical communities. However, I have added new insights to the existing studies. Many alternative method studies are unfamiliar to the mainstream medical practitioners who claim there's no good evidence to substantiate the effectiveness of anything like psychic healing. One of the reasons that most doctors never read about alternative healing studies in the medical journals is because there's a catch-22 associated with vibrational healing. The catch-22 is that an established medical journal would never publish anything of a controversial nature without references from another established journal. Since no one in this controversial field can get anything in the orthodox medical journals to begin with, there are obviously no established sources of credible references to quote. Therefore, the medical journals are safe in their ivory towers of scientific dogmatism. It is the purpose of this book to demonstrate that healing via systems that affect the elements of the human subtle nature and anatomy is just the extension of existing medical science. The Newtonian paradigm of physics was extended by the Einstein viewpoint, which is quantum. Likewise, this book will show how the principles of what I call Einstein medicine go beyond the limited Newtonian clockwork universe to comprehend human beings from the perspective of interpenetrating, interactive energy fields. The studies which I have assembled as evidence for our extended subtle anatomy are a collection of clinical observations and experimental findings from a variety of researchers. Some studies have been replicated, others have not. Viewed by themselves, they might be considered weak evidence for the phenomena and energy systems whose existence I am trying to establish. But if viewed collectively, like many small colored tiles assembled into a larger mosaic, one can observe the greater picture. That greater picture is the extended viewpoint of humans as multidimensional beings of energy. Quantum physics and experiments in high energy particle physics has shown us that at the particle level, all matter is really energy. Einstein medicine is a viewpoint that tries to put the Newtonian picture of biomachinery into the perspective of dynamic, interactive energy systems. If we are beings of energy, then it follows we can be affected by energy. Even Orthodox medicine has begun its evolutionary progression towards development of energy methods of treatment. Therapeutic radiation to treat cancer, well, that I got nothing positive to say about that. Electricity to halt pain, electromagnetic fields to stimulate healing of fractures are but the first developments. The energies employed by those who use vibrational methods of healing also delivered measured quantities of energy to patients. However, the energy delivered by these therapies exists in frequencies far beyond conventional equipment. As unbelievable as it might seem, this higher dimensional energy is predicted by the famous Einstein equation E equals mc squared. This book is also written to communicate to others the insights that I have derived from my research over the last 11 years. I feel that I have achieved a new synthesis of understanding in a field that needs some type of theoretical foundation upon which to build. This book will perhaps stimulate further thinking about human health and illnesses in new ways. I consider it a kind of an explorer's guidebook to a newly emerging field of scientific endeavor. It is my sincere hope that there will be those in the general public as well as the medical communities who will read this book with an open mind. There are many radical ideas within this book, and yeah, there is. And that will all find a home in every reader's mind. As with any book, I hope the reader will examine my book with an open yet critical attitude, accepting that information or knowledge which rings true for him or herself. There is no one book that has all the answers. Certainly, this is but a transitional model waiting to be expanded upon, changed, and reshaped as evidence comes forward. The main issue here is experimental validation. What is truly needed is I like that. I love this idea. I wish this would happen. Listen to this. The key issue here is experimental validation. What is truly needed is a multidisciplinary healing research center which can study the elements of the model I have explained within this book. I had long envisioned something like a Mayo Clinic of healing research that would study the many dimensions of healing phenomena within an academic research setting. In a perfect world, that would be wonderful. Such a center would be staffed by medical personnel from all fields, doctors, nurses, medical researchers, but by acupuncturists, healers, herbalists, clairvoyant diagnosticians, engineers, chemists, physicists, and a host of others. And it was a true melting pot of talent, so to speak. There would be an interdisciplinary team that could design experiments to measure the subtle energies of human function and observe how they are affected by different methods of healing. Within the center, there would be a manner of existing diagnostic technologies from brainwave mapping and MRI to the more unconventional unconventional techniques such as electroacupuncture monitoring. A wide variety of resources which we brought to bear would be in trying to understand the basic nature of healing and the potential effectiveness of the healing modalities presented within this book and elsewhere in this field. The center could be a place where the physicians and healers of all backgrounds and disciplines would not only offer their advice in designing experiments, but willing to teach each other their various skills. It would be a place where the healers themselves would come to learn and to be healed. As various modalities of healing were shown to be effective in limited studies, clinical trials would begin in a larger outreach to various clinical treatment centers. All research would be collated and organized through a computer network, which would make inter-organizational networking much easier. For affiliated centers and ongoing research file, access to healing studies would be available through computer link-ups. Such a center would publish its own journal of research, which would hopefully be recognized as a quotable reference and thus eliminate the catch-22 of the established healing research. Many of the healing modalities discussed are less expensive and considerably less toxic or risky than conventional medical and surgical methods. Many have no risk at all. I think you would. My ex-wife was is a Reiki master. I would have to say I would challenge you to tell me a downside to Reiki or having Reiki done anything. There's nothing that I can think of that's negative about it. That can't hurt you, that's for sure. There's great potential for reducing the runaway cost of medicine if doctors begin to incorporate alternative methods on an everyday basis. I do not advocate doing away with all drugs and surgery. No, not at all. Once again, the idea is to be complementary. And some surgery, okay, you break your leg in 4 places, I don't think herbs are going to do you much good. Might relieve a little bit of pain, but no, you're going to need surgery to get your leg fixed. There's a time and a place for it. However, the effectiveness of existing medical technologies can be greatly augmented by alternative therapies. When vibrational healing methods have progressed to the point where they can repeatedly and consistently offer therapeutic options that drugs and surgery cannot, then we can see greater shift away from standard methods of practice. In the future, homeopathic remedies and flower essences may be recognized as useful for treating various chronic ailments, but will still rely on a good vascular surgeon to treat a ruptured aortic aneurysm. But I don't think herbs are going to, if you have a ruptured aortic aneurysm, I don't think homeopathic medicine is going to do you much good. They all have their time and place, all these different techniques. The point is, we must begin to investigate alternative healing for what they can teach us about ourselves as evolving spiritual beings, as well as for their treatments of ailments for which traditional medicine can do very little. My hope is that people will examine the contents of this book in a critical yet open manner and hopefully come away with a better understanding of themselves as the multi-dimensional beings of unlimited healing and growth potential that we are. That sounds encouraging, doesn't it? I think he has a point. I like where I think, and the reason why I want to concentrate on this now is because, as you will find, as I am reading his book, he is it isn't just someone just saying stuff and getting his name in print and then just saying stuff to go buy his book. Because he's not just Joe Blow off the street. He's an established medical neurologist. I mean, the guy's got some authority behind him. He knows, he understands. He does the conventional stuff. But yet he realizes there's much more. And I think that makes his observations about what we're going to talk about much more valid than it would be for someone who has no idea. This guy practices it, knows it, understands it, and realizes there's much more. And we will talk about that in the next show. Take care.